We have an esteemed panel of speakers with us tonight. May I request Ms. Anita Mani, Mr. Toby Sinclair, Mr. Bikram Grewal, Mr. R.P. Singh, and Ms. Akanksha Garg on stage.
So I would first like my panelists to one by one quickly introduce yourselves to the crowd.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Pratap Singh, and today I represent Indian School of Nature here. Thank you.
My name is Bikram Grewal, and I write about birds. I also write about other animals like insects and mammals, butterflies, and for my detractors, I'm also the chairman of Wildlife Protection Society of India, so I have also wear a tiger hat.
Hi, I'm Anita. I run Indian Pitta books. We publish books on birds, wildlife, and natural history for readers young and old alike.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Toby Sinclair. I've lived here for a few months short of 50 years. And for the last 20, I've been working with a DMC called And Beyond and working on various natural history documentaries for the last 35 years.
And thank you. I'm Akanksha Garg, and I run a company known as Waxpol Hotels and Resorts. And we run beautiful, sustainable boutique properties in the Sundarban, Duas, Pench, and Kana. And thank you so much, gentlemen and lady, for being here on the panel with me. So to start this very interesting discussion, I would like to start with the expert, Bikramji. You know, you have got decades of field work where in lesser known tiger reserves or protected areas that offer, very diverse avian variety, and I mean, they're exceptional, but yet they remain unrecognized. What are the barriers that prevent these landscapes from being promoted as premier birding destinations?
Look, it's very, very difficult. I think the big mistake that we are all making is that we're differentiating between lesser known tiger resorts and heavily populated, dense tiger areas. Birding is anywhere and everywhere. You can bird in Goa, which has no tigers. You can bird in Gujarat, very good birding places. All of the northeast, with the exception of Assam, is probably the best birding area. So why are we talking about it's a tiger area, not this thing? Having said that, I think the problems of birding really in India are no longer whether we are birding in a tiger area or a non-tiger area, but the fact is that you or us as tiger operators need to do something about birding. Whether we are birding in tiger areas or not, tiger areas is not important. It's just to do with bird. Having said that, from the birding front, from the birders' point of view, we are well organized. Every town in India, 2-tier, 3-tier, has a nature club, has a birding club. In Delhi, we have 5 clubs. Over the weekend, we don't know what to do with the people. You have a quiz in Delhi, 80,000 people turn up. Every time you have one. So I don't think that birding has a problem in India. What is the problem is, what do you do with tiger watchers when you're running out of time?
Very interesting thought. On that, Toby, I would like to add to what Bikramji just said. You've been involved for birding and you've been in India for so many years. What do you feel has been lost in terms of birding? What has been underutilized? And how can you fill this gap?
Okay, coming back to the theme of the discussion, which is birding in Tigerland, I think that 25, 30 years ago, Bikram and I would wander off somewhere, Bandhavgarh, Kana, Ranthambore, and you could always go watching birds. Because you could stop where you wanted, take whatever route you wanted, you could go where the birds were. But now everything is structured for, as much as I hate it, for showing people tigers, not even showing them Indian wildlife, which is really what I think the focus should be. It's so tiger-centric. That if you wanted to go to Ranthambore to watch birds in, I don't know, November through to March, when the lakes are fabulous for birds, you probably see many species much closer there than you would in Bharatpur, in Malaktala. But you can't get there, because if you're lucky and you were there for 3 days, you might just get route 4 or 3 once in 6 drives. So from a birding point of view, the sort of high-profile tiger reserves are really not very good. They're fabulous for birds, but they're not necessarily good for birder-centric programs and tours. However, there are lots of, I don't want to call them secondary reserves, but reserves that are less well known, reserves that don't necessarily have tiger. I mean, Buxar has very few in North Bengal, where you have a place. Damphar in Mizoram. I remember a friend of mine who Bikram also knew years ago, Andrew Robertson, went to Damphar with John Singh, and they could walk anywhere, and they saw birds that he had never seen anywhere else in South Asia. But there weren't any tigers there, but it was still technically a tiger reserve. So there are opportunities to bird in what is legally tiger land quite easily and openly. But I'm afraid the high-profile areas are not so easy nowadays, and they're not managed for people interested in butterflies, birds, or amphibians.
Can you quickly add to that? Why do you think they're not suitable for birding or amphibians anymore?
Because the rules are such that, I mean, in some parks, if you stop for 10 minutes, the GPS tracker starts going ping, 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 and the driver and the guide will get fined for staying in one place for long enough. They always assume that if you're in one place, you're watching a tiger. But you could be by a banyan tree watching a sort of fruiting mela of a mixed flock of birds. So that's a bit unfair. But I will just qualify that by saying, usually if you're the only vehicle at a particular place for 30 minutes, you're not penalized. It's if you happen to be with 2 other vehicles, you would get penalized.
Thank you. I think that adds to the discussion that we had the other day. You know, Ram, I think what Bikram highlighted earlier, that birding is all over the place. But our focus is birding in Tigerland. And how do we see it as an alternative income generation? And adding to that, globally birding tourism is recognized as a high value and a low impact. Something that India needs to move forward and also provide alternative employment. And so I would like to know your points from that.
Yeah, let me give you a marketing global perspective here. Birding is the fastest growing hobby across the world. But Indian birding, as in birders coming from all over the world for birding in India, has gone down by about 50% in last 10 years. 50%. Brand India, which Toby will agree with me, as a birding destination was amongst the top 3 birding destinations 20 years ago. Today we are way out of that list. What has happened and what have we done wrong in these last 10 years is important to speculate. And what we have done is we have sold ourselves cheap. So in the quest to bring in more and more international birders, the birding companies have been making the tours cheaper and cheaper. And when they do that, what do they compromise on? The quality of guides, the quality of lodges. And so now out there in the global birding market, it is well established that India is a cheap and a not so great birding destination. Now, we all know that India is a great birding destination, but then the market feels differently. So this is the perception where we are now, and we need to change. And we have to rebuild brand India birding.
Very interesting thoughts, Ram. Pricing, I think, plays a very, very important role. That if you don't have consistency in that, like Africa, which has got very, very basic accommodation, but it's still been able to put itself out there, where here we have better quality of accommodation and reserve experience in some cases, and we are right here. Anita, we look across all generations now, and you're writing some very, very interesting books. And I thank you for showing some of them to me. Really, it was really interesting. So storytelling plays a major role at what we've seen with families, with children, with grandparents, in creating interest, and it influences them to go and visit parks or go and look for a particular species. So, and how they actually perceive nature. So, can you tell me how can books, visual media, and narratives help Indian wildlife image transition from a tiger-centric to a biodiversity-centric identity?
True. I mean, it's a good question because if you look at, we just brought out a whole series of books for children on wildlife. And when we were doing the research for those books, we realized that in terms of species counts, India has higher biodiversity and larger number of species than, say, the East Africa, which is seen as the as a mecca for for wildlifers and for bird watchers. But our children and many adults too, we all grew up reading books about koala bears and penguins, species which we are unlikely to actually see in our lifetimes for most of us. I think the issue is the lack of engaging material, which sort of tells you what to look for, about the absolutely delightful and cool, to use more younger terminology, which is what the kind of tourists you want to attract, to understand what kind of fantastic biodiversity we have here. The narrative just has not been built, in my opinion. And I think part of that is the fact that there hasn't been literature about Indian wildlife. There have been reference books, there have been academic papers, but there's been nothing in between, which really sort of celebrates Indian wildlife for young and old audiences, and that's the kind of thing that we're trying to do at Indian Pitta. And so I think to answer your question, the fact is you need to really create that narrative. You need to create that need. I think a lot of the marketing communication that you see from wildlife tourism companies essentially centers around large mammals. There's very little on any other kind of biodiversity. And I agree with Bikram that there is a huge market. I mean, we both of us belong to the Delhi Bird Watching Club, and we do know that every weekend of the year, people are going here and there looking for birds. And we did a quiz for young people on birds and wildlife recently, a few weeks ago, and we reached out to thousands of people. So I think there is a lot of latent interest in this space, and I think if you create the right kind of literature to trigger that interest, I think you will uncover a whole new set of people who want to discover our lodges.
I can see that because, I found your books really impressive. But the thing is, a lot of people, I think it also has to be a part of the school curriculum where children get more awareness on a constant level across all stratas.
No, but I think that also has a sort of a backlash. The minute you put it in a textbook, the child is going to go screaming out of the room saying that I do not want to read this. So I think, anyway, I think, but I think we both agree that you need a lot of more information out there than there is right now,
Toby, I'll come back to you with a quick question here. You mentioned that birding back in the day was much better. But today, in terms of everything is getting very tiger-centric, how can we involve the local youth into birding, and what kind of training can be given so that they can have an alternative employment? Because I think it's a great revenue generator. And if people only don't focus, because nowadays and I know, there are more hotel rooms than there are safari tickets available. And then guests, they start complaining. They've done with the tribal village visit, for example. They've done with the local walk. Might as well take them birding. So what are the challenges and how do we think we can overcome them?
I think personally I'd probably put birding higher up the list from necessary of options available. I think that two different things. You said, I'm not sure birding was necessarily, well, before I answer your question, you said at the beginning that it was easier, or in many ways it was. But actually, because we have better knowledge now, we know where things are, where more species are across the country and across the landscape. There are, in fact, many, many more options for people to go birding. They may not be in Tigerland, though. That's the difference. There are projects training people who would live and work around camps, work in camps, live and work around tiger reserves. Pagdandi does a training course every summer in Satpura, which draws people from across the region. The Indian Nature Guides does a 30-day course in Kana during the monsoon, and I was there for a few days this year, talking about sort of history of conservation. But they spent 2 or 3 days doing herbs. Every night someone would go out and take them to look for spiders. In the evening, we looked at, birds were an important element. In fact, it was all levels of natural history were discussed. Tigers were sort of discussed in passing. And it was the whole emphasis of the course was to give a broad education and awareness to these people. There were about 30 of them, and very, very interestingly, 50% of them were really only Hindi, or comfortable speaking Hindi. And some of them, there were sort of two different sort of groups, two different demographics. The oldest person there was 50 on the course. Half the people were over 30. Half of them between 18 and 30. Half of them were comfortable in English or Hindi. Half of them preferred Hindi. It was a very interesting cross-section of people. But they all lived and worked within 10 kilometers of a park boundary. And we need more and more of that.
I think that's the important part. Your best guides are the people who live locally. Ram, would you like to add something to that?
So this September, in TOFT, Travel in Indian School of Nature, and supported by Run Riders, did a training program for naturalists and guides in the Gujarat run landscape. It was a program over 3 days, 50 plus vernacular naturalists attended that program. And I think more and more such programs have to happen in different landscapes.
Yeah, that's the only way forward. We all have to do a bit of that. Bikram, we've just spoken about that birding is everywhere.
Yeah.
But from a potential where a lot of people are going to the tiger forests and the national parks, do you see it as a tool to de-seasonalize tourism in tiger reserves?
Well, it's better than having shadis, no? That's what you're doing. What happens in Corbett, for instance, once the park is closed in May, up till November, it turns into a shadi ka ghar, na? Even when the park is open, yeah. So you have two choices. You can close down your hotel and then suffer whatever it is, or you can give it out and do bhangra and Hindi music, loud music, which is exactly what is happening. So what do? It's cheap. You don't need big money to do birding. You don't need, the tools are there. Nowadays the cost of a binocular has come down to less than 5,000 rupees for a good one. So you don't have to have a big car or a big camera lens to do it. You can do it here in this lawn. If you walk around Bikaner house, you'll get 30 species of birds in a couple of hours. Wow. So if you are going to, let's say, for the lack of argument, like Toby said, into Ranthambore or to Kana, you'll pick up a couple of 100 species of birds in the morning.
Oh,
Easily. If you go to Bharatpur, you'll probably pick up even more. So, unlike the sexy animal tiger which wins all the time, it is a beautiful animal, and I would love to do this, but we have 1,400 different species of birds in India. And if you go to the certain parts of India, like the northeast, you can easily pick up 300, 400, 500 on one trip. So, yes, you can do things. You can not only do birds, you can do insects, you can do trees, you can do so many other things. And that's what's happening. The trends have started. I'm telling you, it's the tiger people who run tiger resorts who have to now think of innovative ways of keeping their travelers occupied. I don't think in our time, Toby and mine, when we were younger, we used to worry about no, this is 40 years, 50 years back, we used to wonder how to get people more attracted to birding. We don't have to do it now. We actually, for the first time in our lives, I disagree with RP when we say, what are we going to do about the tiger number, the birders numbers have come down. Do we need foreign birders? We don't.
It has absolutely exploded. I mean,
It's exploded here. We don't know, we can't handle the number of birders.
There are groups of people who have spreadsheets on where to go in India to bird every weekend. Really? Yes, because some of the birds are seasonal, you see, and some of them are seen. If you want the photograph with the right breeding plumage, so they've mapped it down to a science. And as Bikram says, there's a WhatsApp group for birders in every small town and city. So I think the inbound market is fantastic. So, I'm sure the outbound market, I don't know anything about the outbound market.
So I think the inbound market is fantastic to the birding locations. But when we look at, reducing the pressure on the national park itself, how, not being tiger centric, because whenever I go to a national park, if I don't tell these guys that I run resorts and I know the national parks with the back of my hand, they come and tell me, madam, I'm looking at a shikra, simple word. Looking at a shikra, I'm sitting, I'm trying to take a picture. Madam, tiger hai, 5 gaadi aage chal gaya hai, jaldi chalo. And then I'll pass couple of vehicles, they'll be like, tiger dikha kya? They have missed a porcupine, they have missed a tree that has been eaten by, they have missed some deer's mating, they have missed, like for example in Sundarbans, I'll tell you, we saw a kill. But it was not a kill of a tiger. It was a water monitor lizard eating a crab. And it's a very rare sighting. Yeah. But it was still a kill. But people were just looking, tiger hai kya? Tiger hai kya? So that mindset has to change.
Yeah, but that's
like a buffy fish owl, for example. True. Great sighting in Sundarbans.
But that's a narrative that has to it has to be changed from both ends, right? I mean, it's...
And I think it is changing. I think it is, as time is moving on, more and more people are getting involved. They're interested in seeing trees of different nature, animals of different nature, mammals of different nature, butterflies. Watching is a big thing. In Calcutta Bird Club, 50% of our walks is dragonfly and butterfly watching walks.
Right. With domestic birding, I agree with you, Anita, and with Bikram that it's really taking off. But purely when you talk about the economics of birding, then the high-paying birder brings in a lot more revenue to that ecosystem than a domestic traveler. So in that context, I feel that inbound or the inbound birding market.
No, but are you talking about economics of birding or economics of tourism?
Tourism.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So that trickle-down impact on naturalists, local guides, local dabas, etc., is not happening because the inbound numbers are going down. And also, I'm not sure. I have a question for you, Bikram. That say 20 years ago, Bharatpur was a one-week destination.
Correct.
And there were 40 homestays and lodges. Today, Bharatpur, in most of the itineraries that I see, is not more than 1 day. And number two, the lodges have come down to just 2. All others have turned into shadigars.
No, that is true. That is indeed true. But when we used to go to Bharatpur, Toby and I, 40 years back, 30 years back, we could walk in any time. We could stay inside the park. All we needed was one apple, and we didn't even have plastic bottled water. There used to be a tap near the mandir. We used to go and drink water there, have a rotten apple in our pockets, and walk around all day. Now you have to get there, you have to register, you have to do. We used to walk from Dhangadi Gate in Corbett to Dikala. And then wherever we found the place, spend the night there in Kinanoli or some place like that. Nowadays you have to fill in forms, then somebody will come, make our life miserable. I don't think going to a national park is fun anymore. It isn't.
It's not, and I agree with Bikram on much of what he said. The other thing he didn't mention is that when we went into Bharatpur 45 years ago, we would identify something from the back of the rickshaw that we were sharing, and we would both argue about it, and then the rickshawwala would turn around and say, "You're both talking crap. You don't know what you're talking about, and it's something completely different."
Absolutely, and he was right.
He was right. We were totally wrong.
Yeah.
Life has changed. Maybe.
So how can we bring it back? Like, how can we make
I
it
think, to be
interesting
honest,
again?
I again come back and what Bikram said earlier, and what I think I said. High yield, high revenue, if that's the word. I don't know. I'm not sure if it's what we want. Tourism into tiger reserves for bird watchers is really a non-starter. It really is. But there are some good birding trips that you can do to areas, whether it's Gujarat is fabulous for the birds. Parts of South India, into the Western Ghats, where there's some really good properties, and quite. There may not be 5-star, but there's certainly 3.5 and 4-star properties, which can be bases for birding. I think Central India is trickier because everything is so, unfortunately, so tiger-centric, and the management is so tiger-centric. But there are many, many parts of, whether it's Bengal, in the Duars, into Eastern Himalaya, Gujarat, as I said, southern India, they're phenomenal birding places, and there's reasonably good 3-4-star sort of level accommodation. So the revenue figures should theoretically go up.
Would you like to add something to it?
Say that I think a lot of the birding also happens on the periphery of these reserves. Necessarily we don't really travel inside national parks. Though I must say, I've had brilliant birding inside Kanha from a safari jeep here, and in Corbett in the year before, it became so overcrowded. But the fact is, because they all happen on the periphery where habitats essentially interface, where forests turn into grasslands or into village lands or into cultivated areas. And these are areas where you find a lot of birds, because that's when you see species from 2 or 3 kinds of ecosystems. And these are typically outside national parks. You don't need to be on that jeep, on that route, and you don't have to jockey to be, in jeep number 1, in path number 4, and do all stuff which now seems to require a computer algorithm to get it right? Yeah. So, but you don't need to do that. You don't need these special passes, and I think that's the real opportunity, because if you have more guests than you have passes, then maybe you should be looking at areas that don't need you to go into the park and take them birding or amphibian watching or reptile watching in the periphery. I think that would be very interesting to do, and I think if they haven't anything else to do, I think they would be very happy doing this.
Anita, in all fairness to everyone, it is happening now more and more.
Right.
All these resorts, when you come back from your game drive at 10 o'clock, till your next game drive, assuming that you have one, what do you do for the 3-4 hours? You do peripheral birding, butterfly watching, tree watching, which is happening now more and more. It's basically not because of anything else. How do you keep your guests entertained, occupied, rather than entertained? I think a lot of that is happening. I don't know, Toby, what do you think?
I think it's always been the case. I mean, when we started camps in Kana, Bandhavgarh in 1980, Kana in the early 80s, a birding walk was always part of being there. It's not a new thing. It's always an integral part. What is new now are sort of the sexy sort of add-ons like wellness and spa and stuff like that, which none of us even thought of. We were more worried about whether there was a bar than whether there was a spa in these places. But birding has always been part of visits into these lodges. It's not new.
Yeah, in fact, if you take my example at Chambal, the entire lodge has come up on the basis of bird watching, and both of you are partners in crime for that. And what me and Bikram were just discussing just before the discussion was about the bird festival, which we started at Chambal, was an effort in this direction to sensitize a lot of people about the potential of bird watching and bird conservation, and we had delegates from 29 nationalities descending for various kinds of knowledge workshops. So I think Anita was also part of both of them, and any initiatives like that possibly could be restarted.
I think that's a really good input, Ram. And the whole idea about how this can be just not an add-on activity, but streamlined into your resort operations going forward. That birding is run every day from this time to this time. Guests can just come and join and will help encourage people who are not even aware of birding as an activity. And Anita, adding to that, like we were talking about this young generation, they all love their phones. They were constantly on it at all times. And they absorb a lot of content through these devices, like print, digital, gaming, social media. How can cross-media storytelling be used to build a new generation of bird enthusiasts who see tiger reserves and their peripheries as vibrant ecosystems, not just tiger habitats?
Okay. So one, I'm just going to step back a little bit and add a point to the previous thing we discussed. The fact that, yeah, there's a great opportunity for birding, and as you're saying, it's already happening inside and outside the parks. But if you go to most resorts, they'll have a whiteboard near the entry where they'll say all the mammals seen, like leopard seen or tigers seen. But nobody has a bird list. Most properties don't even have a checklist of birds. And I'm saying, I think that's the first thing one needs to do, is to have a checklist of birds, to know what birds are on the property. And to answer Akanksha's question, for the younger generation, I think what we could do is to turn to that thing what the young generation calls gamification. What do youngsters like? They love games, they love competitiveness. So put up a leaderboard, make up a bird list, make it an activity for the family to tick off as many birds as they can see during the day, and have a running leaderboard at the end of the day to see who has seen the most number of birds. We'll have to work to build this, to build the excitement, just as the way with tigers, the excitement seems to come automatically. But with birds, and birds are marvelous. I think to all of us who sit here, there are brilliant things in every bird. Like, we all know about the peregrine falcon, for example. But did we know the peregrine falcon has an inbuilt sunglasses, like a nictitating membrane that it falls over its eyes to prevent dust and debris from getting in? There are so many cool things to know about birds. And I think it's just important to put the information out there and, like I said, make it a game, make it competitive, have a bird race in your property every day. Do exciting things. Yeah.
I think actually you'll find that most of the better lodges, 3, 4, 5-star lodges around parks do have bird lists.
Yes.
And they do have them in their rooms. I noticed that old colleague, someone I've known for years, Mohan, who's just arrived from Kana, who's here in the audience. I've been birding with him in the buffer areas of Kana. Going out in a jeep, you can stop where you want, you can go where you want, and the bird life is as good as it is in the core of the park. But there are not a lot of buffer areas that you can walk in. So there are very few of those. But there are places where there are these lodges who are we think they're tiger-centric, but they have good naturalists who will take you out for 3 or 4 hours in a jeep and go birding. But it's not what the lodges sell. It's the add-on.
So with this, I think it's been a very, very interesting conversation. And what we've learned, if I can just sum it up for everybody, is that it is not important that you have to go inside the national park, get a ticket for birding. You can do it in the buffers area as well. And I think it will really encourage local people living in different areas to get skilled, trained. There are courses running actively. The Forest Department also has these guidebooks available in Hindi or regional language. If you don't have any available in your area, if you have a bird checklist, you can purchase this online. I know Madhya Pradesh Tourism and the Forest Department has one available like that for skilling. Alongside, try and develop activities to encourage children, like a bird checklist, what Anita mentioned. I think that was really interesting. And what Bikram said, it's there everywhere. It's just about looking out. And building brand India. If you talk about it, see, what we need today is Instagram posts. Birding in India, hashtag birding in India. If every one of us who is here today and who's selling birding to in any capacity sells the same hashtag, it'll get viral. Because we don't have TikTok, unfortunately. So we have to use Instagram in whatever capacity. And that's how we will again restart India, by getting that numbers out. So thank you so much, Toby, Ram, Bikram, Anita. It was such a pleasure to have you all over here today. Thank you.
Thank you.